The more my parents rejected spirituality and religion, the more I was drawn to it. That was my form of adolescent rebellion.
That's
It
interesting.
wasn't drug, sex, and rock and roll. It was spirituality.
Tell me about the divine feminine for you.
The divine feminine for me, the divine mother, is she cares about everything. Nothing is left out. I often make a distinction between interfaith and interspiritual, in the sense that interfaith is about, finding all of these different separate traditions and honoring them, which is beautiful. It's a peacemaking action in and of itself, is to make an effort to familiarize yourself with other traditions, but that's still otherizing, othering. But that's the teachings of the dark night of the soul, is that everything that you've developed spiritually goes away.
Is that what it means, the dark night of the soul?
Yeah, that's really what it means.
Hello.
Hello, Hanuman Das.
What are you doing here in the UK?
Well, we're really here for fun, for an adventure.
Okay.
But as long as I was in London, I gave a talk last night at St. James Church through the Alternatives program on my latest book, Ordinary Mysticism. And that's my only work, and the rest of the time we're exploring Gangadas's roots in Scotland.
Oh, wonderful. Scottish roots. We also have some family Scottish roots.
That's right.
I really appreciate you being here, Mirabai, for this conversation, and to also share something of your story and your journey with anyone that might be listening. I certainly feel honored to have you here at home, and I've wanted to be with you for a long time, for many years. So I'm so glad that we get to connect on a very personal level as well. So thank you, firstly, for being here.
Thank you. I feel the same way. I've been following Go Dharmic and really wanting to meet you, and you and I have corresponded, but to be together is such a gift. Thank you.
I would love to hear about your personal journey first. Like, where have you come from? What's the road to here like for you? Where did you grow up? Just something about your youth and your journey.
Thank you for asking. So, I grew up in Taos, New Mexico, which is where the Neem Karoli Baba Ashram and Hanuman Temple in America is. But it wasn't there then. But what was there is the Lama Foundation, where Ram Dass created Be Here Now with the Lama community. I think Be Here Now came out in 1970, right? So the Lama community came together to transcribe Ram Dass's talks after he got back from India from meeting Maharaji, and they put it into this beautiful book with lots of art. And so that community is an intentional spiritual community in the mountains of New Mexico, not far from where I lived with my parents. They're still there. I have 4 generations in Taos.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah. So I grew up in proximity to this intentional spiritual community where many different spiritual teachers representing multiple paths came through.
And how did you find that place?
Well, my parents read Be Here Now.
Okay.
Living in New York when it first came out. And my parents were part of the counterculture movement of the late 60s and early 70s. So they were kind of early hippies, but very similar background to Ram Dass, kind of educated East Coast Jews.
Right.
Who were dismantling everything that they grew up with, primarily the values, and definitely their ancestral tradition of Judaism and any other organized religion.
Why do you think that was? I've never really asked anybody why it was quite a lot of young Jewish people in America that went on that journey. What's your thoughts?
It's the big mystery. Everybody wonders why there are so many disenfranchised Jews who were drawn to India, to Buddhism and to Hinduism, to Maharaji and other teachers, of the Dharma. so it's hard to say. I think there's a deep seeking in the Jewish soul, a deep sense of questioning everything. This is coming to me as you ask the question. So a core value of Judaism is to grapple and wrestle and question. And so that includes ourselves and our traditions. And so I think that spirit of inquiry infused that period of time when people were questioning society and prevailing social values, at least in the United States, and the harm that religion has done in this world, the harm that's been perpetrated in the name of religion, any religion. So my parents, for instance, were not interested in Judaism as a religion.
Right.
They were connected to the social justice teachings at the heart of Judaism, but not the religiosity. And they also were questioning culture and society and consumerism. So a lot of the movement at that time was to simplify. So my parents were middle class American Jews, and they literally gave everything away, piled their children into a camper, what's called here in England a caravan.
Caravan, okay.
Yes. And gave it all away and got on the road and started traveling around.
Oh, wow.
And ended up in New Mexico.
So they left New York and came to New Mexico?
Yeah, it took a year. We traveled for a year, living in Mexico, in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, for a lot of that time. And ended up in Taos because of the education. There was an alternative school for kids that was based really in the arts. And it was a very unusual place, very community-oriented. But it was, at a certain point, run by Lama Foundation.
Okay.
So Lama Foundation took over this school, and that's why I, at a young age, was exposed to many teachers and teachings.
And what was the Lama Foundation? I don't really know too much about it. So Lama
Foundation was and is what would be called an intentional spiritual community.
Okay.
And it's dedicated to the meeting of the ways, sub-ek, as Maharaji would say, the one that is present in the all, so that all paths lead home to the one. And so Lama is a place where teachers from Sufism, not so much mainstream Islam, but the mystical branch of Sufism, many different Sufi traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, all the different schools of Buddhism, Native American wisdom, because we live in proximity there to the Taos Pueblo, which is an indigenous community. And what else? Christian mysticism, mystical Judaism.
So you naturally just went towards this place and...
Well, my parents had read Be Here Now. So they wanted to see the place where Be Here Now was made. They were interested in Ram Dass. But interestingly, when they arrived at Lama Foundation, they didn't like it.
Really?
They felt like it was too religious, even though it was very free in the sense that it wasn't committed to one teaching or one teacher. Although Maharaji's picture was always over the stove in the kitchen and still is 50-something years later. But it was still too organized for them. They were free spirits and they didn't want to... They just felt like people were almost too precious about their spirituality. So, but because the more my parents rejected spirituality and religion, the more I was drawn to it. That was my form of adolescent rebellion.
It wasn't
drugs, sex, and rock and roll. It was spirituality. So at a very young age, I left home and moved to Lama. I was 14 on my own and was very dedicated to spiritual practice in multiple spiritual traditions. So it's very natural for me, I guess is what I'm saying, Hanuman Das, to recognize the presence of the sacred in multiple spiritual spaces. And it has never made sense to me to pick one path to the exclusion of any other. And I think Ram Dass really influenced me that way. I met him then when I was a young teenager and went off with him when I was 15 and just kind of traveled around with him. And the way that he, as a scholar as well as a yogi, would draw on all of these different spiritual traditions, Taoism and the Gospels of Jesus and Kabbalah and Maharaji's teachings and the teachings of Theravadan Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. And it was almost like there was this space in the air where all of these spiritual transmissions were accessible. And he would just tap on one and it would flow through. And I think that so much influenced me. I dropped out of high school. It was not right for me, but I ended up going to university and studying religious studies and mysticism.
Wow. Where did you do that?
At the University of New Mexico, where I'm from.
Okay.
And even though at Lama Foundation and even Ram Dass, people would say, you can't find it in books. I understood that you can't find enlightenment in books. You can't have direct experience of God in books. But you can find great inspiration and light in reading these sacred texts.
Yeah, and actually, I have a very similar journey.
Tell me.
That when I first found that copy of Be Here Now in a charity bookshop, a feeling of light from different directions.
Interesting.
And then that really sparked my curiosity in exploring many ancient texts. And I actually found that in this one, the Rig Veda, there is a verse in the Rig Veda which says, Ikkam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vedante. And it means the truth is one, but the wise will see it through many lenses or find it through many paths. And in many ways, it actually transcends the idea of interfaith, because it's just one.
That's right.
That we see from different directions.
Beautiful. I often make a distinction between interfaith and interspiritual, in the sense that interfaith is about, finding all of these different separate traditions and honoring them, which is beautiful. Yeah. It's a peacemaking action in and of itself, is to make an effort to familiarize yourself with other traditions, but that's still otherizing, othering. Whereas what you're speaking about is more what I would call, for lack of a better term, definitely there's no good term, interspiritual, which is about experiencing the presence.
That's beautiful. In fact, once Godharmic was receiving an award for work in food distribution in London, and it was an interfaith gathering. And I was quite tricky and playful with the crowd. I asked the group, can you put your hands up if you feel tolerance is a good idea?
Yeah.
And everybody put their hands up. And I said, well, when your children go to school, would you like them to just merely tolerate each other? Right. And I think what you're talking about, I said, we should believe in radical love or unconditional love for one another, which is a much more beautiful bar that honors the truth of all of these various traditions that they have in them, unconditional love, and move beyond tolerance and move beyond just merely tolerating. I want you to tolerate your friends at school.
You are my brother. I love that. And I have said exactly, my husband Gangadas is here with us. Have I not said the same words? Like tolerance, I don't want to be tolerated, and I don't want to tolerate, say, a Muslim. What I want to do is pray with a Muslim and let my heart take the risk of allowing my heart to be transformed by the encounter with the heart of Islam.
Yeah.
For instance.
And I feel like when you talk about Sufism and ideas like that, that's where the oceans actually mingle as well, don't they? They like come together, and all of these various different traditions have an inner spiritual heart where the heart is already one. Yeah. And it's only really in the mind, I feel, that we experience that difference. The mind can do otherness. Heart can't do otherness.
That's right.
So you were there at Lama, you started to study. various different traditions. Did you start writing at an early age? Was that
practice? I started to practice. That was much more important even than this. The study came later.
Sure.
And which was great because the study built on a base of practice, of transformative, encounter. But yes, did I write at an early age? Yes, I did. I don't feel like everybody who has writing in them needs to have had it awaken at a young age, but I did. I started writing poetry and short stories as soon as I could write.
Oh, do you still have many of them?
No. That would be fun. But my parents really encouraged it. They were artists and writers and poets themselves. So I had a lot of support for being a writer. And I loved to write. And I love to write now. I've written over a dozen books, and people say, how do you do that? As if it were some kind of grind.
And what was the first book?
The first book that I published?
The first book that you wrote that you feel like was a real work of yours?
Oh, of my own. Well, see, because my first few books were translations of the Spanish mystics, St. John of the Cross,
sure,
Dark Night of the Soul, and St. Teresa of Avila,
The
Interior Castle, and several books from there. I also translated Julian of Norwich, the showings from Middle English. So my translations are kind of one category, although for me they're very creative, just as creative as writing a book in my own voice.
Sure. And when you're doing those translations, did you what was your process like for translating them? Like they're in older forms of localized languages. Did you work with lots of different translations, or how
exactly?
How's the process?
So I had multiple dictionaries, including a dictionary of early Renaissance Spanish, because that's what I was translating, and then multiple English translations. Although Dark Night of the Soul there were only two existing English translations.
Wow.
Both from the 1930s and 1950s, both by men, Catholic men. I am, as you may have noticed, neither a man nor a Catholic, but I was really approaching it as a literary and mystical masterpiece. And that was what I hoped to convey in the translation, is the beauty, the lyrical beauty of these texts and the passion of yearning for God that infuse both of these texts.
That's remarkable and beautiful. And did you find that it enthused in you as you worked through, like this process of translating a text in that way, because you're working with each word slowly, you're really kind of enjoying the meal very slowly, bite by bite, whereas others who are just reading it or kind of studying it, they'll sing it and move on. Whereas this process of working with the text is really something quite special, isn't it?
It is, Hanuman Das. That's beautiful. You're very good at this.
You can pay me later.
It feels like darshan.
Yeah.
In my last book, Ordinary Mysticism, I have a section called Translation Darshan, because that's my experience of translating is that I'm sitting at the feet of these saints.
I love that.
And they're giving me the nectar, and I'm trying to feed it to others. But first I get to drink it myself.
Enjoy it. Yeah. Well, that is actually, I think the Dalai Lama calls it something like good selfishness, or wonderful selfishness, that it's good to want to have and be in that space so you can share it with others. I'm actually working on a text at the moment. I'm nearly finished with the first book, and it's called Gospel of Love. And it's the Ramcharitmanas of Tulsidas. And similarly, like the translations, that this is actually one of them here, the Ramcharitmanas of Tulsidas. I feel Neem Karoli Baba and his tradition and his community is all this. So in here we find the Sundarkand, we find the verses of many of the verses of the Hanuman Chalisa. We find the same person, Tulsi, who wrote the Chalisa, and Ma used to get this memorized in the temples, and as I worked through line by line, I also felt the other translations that are out there are quite archaic English. Also, I'm male, I can't get away from that part, but I feel like early 20th century translations might be quite colonial in their
Yes, like
language or thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. So you're doing, this is wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. If I can support you in any way as you do this,
Oh,
'cause
that would
it
be
sounds
sweet.
like
I
you're
would love to
finished.
show it to you. Well, because it's quite a long book, we have to break it down into chapters. So, this is the first one is finished. It's called the Balkand. And in the Balkand, you have the childhood of Ram and all of the leelas of that. But again, exactly what you said, you get to sit at the feet of the saints and you get to immerse in that love.
Totally transformed my life doing these translations.
And which ones made the most impression on you? Which books or works?
Well, so after that, after my first 3 translations, I did another translation years later, but then I started writing in my own voice. So then I wrote a bunch of books in my voice, but they gave me this foundation to stand on. But it's hard to say, Hanuman Dass, because what happened, you probably know this, and maybe your listeners do not, but when my first book came out, Dark Night of the Soul, the translation with an introduction, a substantial introduction to the teachings of St. John of the Cross, Ram Dass was a big influence on me in connecting with John of the Cross because he loved him. As another Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi person, pagan. So when I translated Dark Night of the Soul, the day that book came out, my daughter died in a car accident. And so my first book had just been released, Dark Night of the Soul, new translation of this, quintessential book on the transformational power of suffering. And I plunged into the heart of that darkness, of that unknowing, that radical unknowing, where so I was 40 at the time. I'd been on a spiritual path since I was 15, right? So everything I'd ever learned came apart. It meant nothing. I had nothing to stand on. I was in the void. But that's the teachings of the Dark Night of the Soul, is that everything that you've developed spiritually goes away, and you're plunged into a state of radical unknowing.
Is that what it means, the Dark Night of the Soul?
Yeah, that's really what it means. It's not about having a hard time necessarily. It's about being stripped of all of your sense of connection to God, of understanding of God. So your sensory proximity to the sacred feels like it's gone, and your intellectual or conceptual orientation to God language means nothing. John of the Cross says this is a sign of spiritual maturity, because you're able to have a direct experience. That's what mystical means, right? A direct experience, unmediated through these habitual ways of experiencing the presence of God or thinking about the divine. And so there's nothing like profound grief, a shattering loss, to plunge you into this naked spiritual state.
What was that? I can't imagine what it was like for you, like to lose your daughter.
Yeah, I know. Any parent like you or any of us who love children, it's an unthinkable experience, and yet incredibly common, especially in non-Western cultures.
Yeah.
So at the time, I had already signed a book contract for translating The Interior Castle by Saint Teresa of Avila, who was really Saint John of the Cross's guru, his teacher, his spiritual connection. And I wasn't that interested in her. I was very interested in him. I wasn't that interested in her, but I knew I needed to withdraw from the world after my daughter died. I needed to go within and be with myself, with God, with Jenny, my daughter. And translation was perfect for that period. So I just left the world behind for a year, and I worked on this translation. I'd been given a book advance. I had a husband supporting me, and I had the privilege of just doing that book. So I translated The Interior Castle, fell in love with Saint Teresa of Avila, and she accompanied me in my grief. in my mourning process. And I also did a Jewish traditional mourning cycle, which is 1 year. So I let that guide me, even though I grew up without any Jewish education. I found out about this Jewish mourning ritual and was able to let that hold me. It was like a vessel that I could.
And you had done so much spiritual practice, which would give you some sense of a staff through that storm that so many people don't have. I mean, in many ways, preparation for the unbearable through all of that spiritual practice. I feel for people who don't have anything.
Yeah.
What would you say to people like that? Like, just recently, we're here in the UK. Just recently, there was a family, and their son was stabbed, 18 years old, and I saw the parents on the TV speaking about this stabbing, and I just felt in my heart so much empathy for their situation, but the inability to even understand what that feeling may go through. What would you say to families or to people who go through that kind of suffering? Like Maharaji says, suffering brings me closer to God.
Yeah.
But what does that really mean? Where is that?
Yeah, and it says it in all the spiritual traditions. In the Torah and the Hebrew scriptures, it says God loves those who mourn. And then, of course, blessed are they who mourn in the Gospels of Jesus. It's just, there's this understanding by the wise ones that suffering does open a gate to proximity to the divine. But without a spiritual foundation, orientation, what would happen? All I want to say to that is, although I had studied and practiced deeply for many years, it all went out the window when my daughter died. I had nowhere to stand. I was in free fall. And none of the spiritual teachings that I had collected served me, I felt. In fact, they made me angry because they were like Band-Aids on a gunshot wound or something. It was like, no, that's just not good. Does not work. It doesn't fit the shape, the vastness of this experience. Nothing can meet it. And so I let myself down into the arms of the darkness, of the unknown, of the mystery. And I didn't try to make sense of the senseless. However, I would say, Hanuman Dass, that many years of contemplative practice, meditation, and yes, studying St. John of the Cross too, taught me enough to know that not knowing was not a problem. That I could trust the mystery somehow, and that I didn't need to figure this out. I could allow myself to be shattered and to be wherever I was. And also Bhakti Yoga had given me the orientation to be devoted to my daughter in love. Like, my child has died, and I'm not going to abandon her in death. So I'm going to accompany her by simply being present with losing her.
That's so beautiful.
So I didn't turn away a little bit. So maybe that would be my encouragement to those who don't have a spiritual orientation, is don't worry about having methods and teachings to put this experience into a container. Allow yourself to rest in the mystery and just love whoever or whatever it is that you are grieving, and stay present. And then I also had this sense of, very intuitive sense of connection with the Divine Mother. I mean, I have Siddhima, and she is dear to me. And I have Mother Mary, because through translating the Christian mystics, I developed a deep relationship with Mary. And I have Kali and Durga. I have many, Tara and Kuan Yin. many aspects of the Divine Mother that have resonated with me, and she's the one who held me through this. So call upon the Divine Mother in whatever form, and she will come and she will hold your broken heart. Is my
That's so wonderful. And I remember that letter that Ram Dass wrote to, I can't remember the couple if you're familiar with, but the family who had lost their daughter. And that letter was so beautiful and so touching. And he begins it with humility by saying that I can never know the suffering that you're going through.
Many people sent me that letter when Jenny died.
Really?
Yeah, I had already read it, of course, but yes, I needed to see it again and again. And I love that people thought of me and sent it to me because it was a beautiful letter. And it does, Ram Dass was so good at knowing that he didn't know.
Yeah.
And naming it. And then from that place of humility, and like Socrates, the wise person knows that they know nothing.
Yeah.
From there, such wisdom flows.
I actually, the more I started to listen to Ram Dass, I found many of those ways in the Upanishads or the ancient texts that would say neti neti.
Yes.
Not this, not this. Or there is another incident in the Ramcharitmanas where Sati thinks that Shiva is the Supreme Lord, but Shiva is chanting Ram Nam. And then she's very confused and she approaches Ram and she says, she comes in disguise as Sita. So she is also Sati. She says, you're Shiva, you should be. But then as she's there, they realize that it's not Sita, it's Sati, playfully trying to see if Ram would know. And then as she turns around, she sees millions of goddesses, millions of Rams, millions of Shivas, all in every direction. She looks left and sees them all. She looks right, she sees Parvatis and Durgas and goddesses all around her. And then she's almost, in a way, saying, take this vision away, because now I see it all at once. It's all of them together. And such a, I found it quite wonderful from as you say, interspiritual, the caring mother of looking at that sabek in a beautiful way, and similar to what you found about that in contemporary world through Maharaji and other saints who are here, Ram Dass's teachings, to find that links back to ancient times and ancient texts is also quite a beautiful thing, isn't it?
I love that. I love that story. It's a little bit like chapter 10 in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
When Krishna reveals to Arjuna everything.
It is, yeah.
But I love that this is the feminine and that Sati impersonated Sita.
Yeah.
Is it Shiva? Is it Ram? Yes.
Yeah.
It's all. Is it Parvati? Is it...
And Tulsidas is really playful in that. Like, he shows that Sati is Sita. Oh, she's pretending to be Sita now. She actually is Sita. They are all one. And then she's looking around and seeing it all there. So I think he's presenting that in a way that plays with the awareness of the oneness.
What Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, which is such a technical name, but it's, yes, that all of our souls recognize that essential oneness.
Tell me about the divine feminine for you. What does it mean? How have you explored it in a deeper way? And perhaps Siddhima, like, what does she mean to you?
The last chapter of my book, Caravan of No Despair, about my daughter is about my encounter with Siddhima and how she helped me through that great loss. Siddhima was very interested. So we live in Taos,
yes.
Taos, New Mexico, where there's Hanuman Temple and Neem Karoli Baba Ashram. And so Siddhima, throughout the years, from the time the temple was founded in the early 1980s, she looked after us from afar. She always wanted to know what was going on in Taos. She knew all the children. So she knew my daughter Jenny. Jenny played Hanuman in the Ram Leela for 3 years in a row when she was a little
In
girl.
Taos?
In Taos. We did at Maharaji's Mahasamadhi gathering, the Bandara there in September. The children put on a play every year, Tulsidasa's Ramayana, and Jenny was the first girl to ever play Hanuman. It was like, no, Hanuman's male. You can't do that. But she was a rebel, and I was too, so somehow we pushed it through, and she was the best Hanuman ever, so she did it year after year. The last year of her life, she played Ram.
Wow.
Yeah. So Siddhi knew when Jenny died, because she knew the names of all the children, where they were in school, how old they were, who their parents were. And so she invited us to India very soon after that, like, come, you need to be here. You need to come here. And it took me 9 years. Gangadas did not go with me on that trip. He was not able to go. So I went by myself on the 9th anniversary of Jenny's death. And she just, she just took me in. I was going to say she was not a sentimental person, as you know. She wasn't that kind of ma that, comforts you and coddles you. She was a stark, loving mother.
Yeah.
And so she didn't indulge any kind of even emotion. Like, stop crying, she said. When I sat, of course, when I finally got to her, all I could do was cry. And I feel like crying as I speak of this. And she just, she said, don't cry, because she is with you. It was her time to die. She is always with you. I feel her with you right now. And I said, Ma, the main thing, because she died in a car crash, the main thing as a mother that I worried about most was that she suffered. And I said, can you tell me? Can you tell me if she suffered? And she said, she died in joy. She died in joy. And I just held on to that like a life raft, and it carried me through. Even though it was already 9 years, I still was in pain. And the pain didn't go away, but it shifted, and the space around the pain grew so much bigger.
Mm.
And she just wanted to know how I was and what it was like. And her caring, it was like, how are your travels? What's your program? She was so dedicated to the details of our lives. She brought me kheer that she made. It was Krishna. It was the night that Krishna played with the gopis in the garden. Okay. Full moon. It was that festival, very quiet festival. And she made kheer. She left it on the veranda in the moonlight to be blessed by the moon. You know this tradition. Yeah. And then had it brought to me the next morning, and wanted to know how it was and what happened for me when I ate that kheer. She was so caring. So I feel like, to answer your question in that way, the divine feminine for me, the divine mother, she cares about everything. Yeah. Nothing is left out. There's nothing that is sacred versus not sacred. It's all sacred. And the embodied experience, our desires, our appetites, all of it is blessed by the mother. Beautiful. Nothing is left out. It's not about transcending this body or out this incarnation. This incarnation, I noticed, will be over very soon. But while we are here to learn to bless it all. And so really I'm in this answer, I'm combining my last 2 books, the one called Wild Mercy, Living the Fierce and Tender Wisdom of the Women Mystics, where I wrote about women mystics from all the spiritual traditions, but really it was about the Divine Mother, right, as the unifying force, and the blessing of embodiment, of experience, of creativity and art and politics, and everything that you do is the divine feminine to me. Yeah. And then my next book was Ordinary Mysticism, that isn't just about the feminine, but the understanding that all of life is sacred, and that we've confined the presence of the sacred in everything, not just religion and formal spiritual practice.
Oh, I love it, and I can't wait to explore them together with Sheena, my wife. She has a great attachment to the divine feminine, and
See that.
through her creativity, less words, but through her art and through her work, she likes to explore that. So we'd definitely love to explore those. And actually, something I'll share with you. When I was with Siddhima, just to we took our young son. This was around 15 years ago, to India, and less than 1 year old, growing up here. I'm born here, and people think, why are you taking your young boy up to the Himalayas? They wouldn't take him on a holiday in Europe at this stage. Let's let him grow up a little bit first. But we wanted to go, and Ma was calling, and said, come to the hills. And he was really playfully naughty on the veranda up in Rishikesh, where Ma used to sit.
Yeah.
And Krishna Das was meditating with a whole group of people, were sitting around, and we were having a great time. But this young boy would not sit still. So they were all sitting in front of Siddhima and meditation and kind of, sitting still. Nobody was talking. And he was just running around the floor, climbing about and so on. So I went forward to pick him up and kind of pick him up, and Ma grabbed my hand and said, "Nahi, Bal Krishna hai."
No.
It's like baby Krishna.
Yeah.
Let baby Krishna play.
Oh, I love that.
So to your point, when you said like mixing life and spirituality and all of it in together,
Yeah.
Ma allowed him to be,
Yeah.
and she picked him up and put him on her lap, and it was extraordinary. And I asked her, "Ma, can I take a photo?"
Yeah.
And she said, "No." She stopped me because he was sitting, and she was like taking care of him while everybody was thing. So I always remind him now. He can't remember, obviously he was very small, but that loving thing that Ma had, I felt that. I genuinely felt that, and like these blankets that she gave us, Maharaj's blanket, she said it's for Arjun, like when he was a baby. So it wasn't something that we immediately placed on the altar and started to pray to.
Yeah.
We covered the baby's cot and kept it in that way and used it as a blanket for their taking care of them. Now, of course, they're older. We placed it there, but often the religious practices or things of that nature can be very separate from our daily life, can't they? And I think that's what you're moving towards in ordinary mysticism.
Exactly. Yes, that separating the sacred from everything else is, if we cannot find the presence of the divine in the midst of our dirty kitchen or our argument with our spouse, or someone dying or someone being born, or the beauty of this world and the mundane aspects, then what hope do we have of finding God in meditation or in chanting?
And what's your day-to-day kind of like? I'm trying to think of somebody who doesn't really practice meditation or chanting or deity worship or any kind of practice in a formal sense. How is their daily life meditation, that ordinary practice for them? Like you've journeying on the train across London and facing difficulty, or doing kind of the everydayness spiritual practice. Is there anything that you could share about that? Just the normal day, like having to travel across London, dropping the kids to school and being cut up in traffic. I know Ram Dass used to use the example of being cut up in traffic. How's your thought process with that?
Well, full disclosure, Hanuman Das, I meditate every morning. I do yogasanas every morning. And then I go about my ordinary sacred day. I don't separate that from picking up our grandchildren at school, or making a meal in the midst of 10 other things, and checking email and all the things of life that are so demanding. It all is possible because I meditate every morning. So I would be disingenuous if I were to say that I only use my daily life as the portal to the sacred.
Sure.
Because what happens is, by virtue of having cultivated a contemplative practice for all these years, I'm able to take that off the cushion and into the world.
I love that.
Yeah. And so I really do recommend to people that they don't have to have a formal sitting practice like I do, but to somehow intentionally practice presence. That is the to build our capacity to be with things as they actually are by slowing down and breathing. I mean, there's these ancient yogic breath practices are so easy to do. To just simply, I mean, people talk about regulating their nervous system through breath. It's very accessible. That it encourages us or invites us into a place of stillness within the storm of life. And from that place of stillness, we're able to show up. So that if you're having, let's use email as an example. So many of us are plagued by the overwhelming amount of communications that come through. To be able to open the computer and take a breath and not enter into the next task as another frenetic to-do on the list, but rather just pause and invite. It's not like you have to call in the Divine Mother or Neem Karoli Baba or anything in a formal way, but just invite the presence into that moment so that whatever task is at hand has some space around it, some breath around it. And then it enables us to become curious. What's in this moment? What does this moment taste like? And how can this email be more than just an email?
I love it. The meditation of email.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And of everything. Of food, of sex, of art, of political engagement, of service. So the path of karma yoga, which is so much of your path, which of course is inextricable from the path of bhakti yoga and devotion, is that's what it's all about, right? That every action becomes a prayer if you can just pause and allow it to be.
Yeah, I love that. And I was flying to the Middle East last year, and the flight was delayed. Everybody was a bit frustrated. It was probably like 1 or 2 a.m. in the night, and the bags didn't arrive, and the bags didn't arrive, and the bags didn't arrive. And so you see people panting around and running around, getting frustrated. Kids are obviously tired and so on. And then I had my mala in the hand, and I was just standing there, and something that has come out of my time with Ram Dass, really, like something that came of my time with Ram Dass was trying to send Ram love or sending loving awareness into other people around me. So as I was standing there around those belts which carry the bags, Ram, 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 and just sending Ram. And I was really enjoying myself.
Yeah.
I was really, my bag still didn't come, nothing, people were frustrated and, probably had places to go and important things to do, but what can you do? You're not in control of that situation. So that was just one of the things that, like you mentioned about email. I love that, and I will send that to all of my busy friends who are constantly have this endless list of emails that come. And I love the fact that you said every moment of life is an opportunity to enter into the sacred, whether it's taking a meal or political engagement or how we approach everything. It's so rich, isn't it?
Yes, and that story of traveling to the Middle East and waiting for your bags and sending Ram to all the people and all the, that's a beautiful example of what I'm speaking about.
Yeah, I think is that the essence of what we're exploring in ordinary mysticism?
Yes, it is. That is. And I want to say, I feel like I learned that from my mother.
Wow.
Yeah, who's still alive. She's 91, very
bless her.
healthy. Yeah. healthy and vibrant, and she does that.
She must have some wonderful stories.
So she's a storyteller. I wrote a book about her during the pandemic,
Wow.
a memoir of my mother through my eyes.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's my most literary book. It's the most experimental in praise of language itself.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
And it just is being it's picked up now by a publisher, so it should come out soon.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh, tell me a little bit about the practice of writing for you. I'm sure it's a spiritual practice as well, but the technical aspects, like how have you approached writing over the years? I know you sit with many writers and help them as well to explore their writing journey, and in that way, what is that part of it? Like, what's your writing practice like for anyone that might be thinking, I think I have a book in me, or I have a spiritual telling to share?
Yes. Oh, thank you. I love craft questions about writing, because people want me to talk about spiritual things all the time. It's like, yes, okay, but I'm also a writer who loves the craft of writing. And so that makes writing all these books not just easy. It's not easy. It's a joy. It's a pleasure. It's my art. And that is where I find my greatest creative expression and connection between the sacred and the embodied. One thing about me is I'm not very structured in my writing practice. I tried for years to have a schedule. It doesn't seem to fit the shape of my life.
That's interesting. I would have imagined that you have a very rigorous and fixed process.
Because I've written so much that you would think I did, but I don't know how to say this. I love to write, and so I'm motivated. I also have book contracts. I always have a book contract. I mean, just on a very mundane level, that's very motivating because you have to turn something in 9 months or whatever it may be. So the closer I get to my deadline, the more I write. Just like when you're back in school and you had a paper due and you put it off until
I know that feeling.
Yes. Although I try to portion it out. But I would say, so I have to do my practices in the morning. As I said, that's the foundation of my life. I feel like I can't function unless I meditate and do yoga. I'm a little bit dependent on those practices. I also exercise. We live in a beautiful place in the mountains, and I just walk out my door and I'm in nature. So that comes third. So the yoga, meditation, being in nature, and then I can write. And then I can write and write and write. Also, beauty is very important to me. I'm an artist also.
Yeah.
And so I have to be in a space that is harmonious and serene and beautiful.
That's
like nice. If you walked into my studio, like yours, it's filled with beauty. And that bathes me in that. Gangadas helped me build a beautiful studio so that I could write. And I would say that my last couple of books have really benefited from having this dedicated space that is also a work of art to immerse myself in. I learned at an early age to do a kind of writing where you give yourself a topic. So on my phone, I have prompts. Like I want to write about my horse when I was 13. Fancy the horse. His name was Fancy. I'll write that down. Or the dream about leaving the child at the gas station. This recurring dream I would have about forgetting my kids at the gas station, petrol station, whatever it may be. So I have a list of, say, 30 prompts. I will take a prompt and I will give myself 20 minutes. I will time it. And then I will just go free write for 20 minutes on that in response to that prompt.
Right.
And that 20 minutes might generate 5 pages. And that might end up being 2 paragraphs in the book that I've distilled and shaped and rewritten and edited and carved like stone, But I first let it all out. Right. So that would be my offering to others. And this is what I learned from, I guess I was around 12 or 13 and studied with Natalie Goldberg, who's a great teacher of writing. She was a teacher at our school. in Taos, and she's now internationally renowned for teaching writing. And she just happened to develop this method with us, with these children in the 1970s. And I still use it for all my writing. So I give myself a prompt and I go for 20 minutes. And then if it has juice, I keep going. And it often does now. But I start with that practice of free writing. And then later I edit, but I don't even think about censoring or editing or controlling where my mind takes me.
You allow it all out.
Allow it out.
I often get this vision of God's hand on top of the head and just letting it flow through, letting it come out.
Exactly.
That's
so
beautiful.
Important.
And how long would you do? So you'd pick one topic and then write for 20 minutes?
Yeah, I write, I would say, in 4-hour blocks.
Okay.
Once a day.
Wow.
And not every day. And then I take Shabbat. Shabbat is the Sabbath in the Jewish tradition. Yes. And it's a sacred practice to disengage from the world one day a week. It's essential for me. I even did it as a single mother with 2 little girls, very little money. Back when my kids were growing up, I always practiced Shabbat as a time to not do the things that compel me the rest of the week, the compulsions of all the things to do. And that gives me a certain spaciousness that I can bring into my very busy life. Like everyone, I have a very busy, very demanding life. But I do write most days. And 4 hours is about my limit because it's so intense.
Yeah.
It's like, I often say to Gangadas, I feel like a tube that fire is passing through.
Wow.
And I can't endure it forever. I mean, I try to be hollow and empty, but it doesn't mean it doesn't cost me. I feel the same way when I teach or when I give Dharma talks. I'm sure you do too, that when we're doing the work, it's effortless, but then afterwards there's a sense of being used.
Yeah. Ram Dass would say rent a mouth. But I do feel that when I'm giving a talk or if I'm being out, I go travel quite a lot and give talks. But when I'm writing, that analogy of fire, I don't really feel that. I feel like it's actually quite like meditation for me. But maybe because I work quite slow, like not as much as that you would be writing, I'm very slow with it. And so sometimes it might be just 30 minutes or 45 minutes and it's almost just like a meditation that I'm able to just go into it. I don't feel that fiery flow, but sometimes perhaps maybe it's a lot of the texts that I've worked on are on other texts.
Yeah.
So it's more like the translations and working on those kind of texts rather than allowing just pure flow to be there. So far, many of the texts, it might be that, but that's a beautiful analogy to think about, a tube allowing fire through it and keeping that. But they're beautiful and they're offerings, and I think so needed in today's time. And actually one of the reasons I really wanted to sit down with you is because more and more so the social, uninformed by the spiritual, creates violence.
Yes.
And I feel that you need head and heart together to be able to make positive change. And although many people are doing good work in the world to try and increase environmental protection or do work for nature, if it's informed by anger and violence, then it actually creates more negativity and anger in the world. So what's your thoughts around that aspect for how this work can influence and shape the future?
Beautiful question, Hanuman Das. You're right that social action and environmental activism without any kind of spiritual foundation is often characterized by anger and therefore perpetuates more division, and violence. The same is true in the opposite direction. I mean, I grew up with all of these spiritual traditions and spiritual teachers and teachings, and often the emphasis was on transcendence, as I said, just moving up and out of this world, that this world is Maya, it's illusion, or in the Christian tradition, a veil of tears.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And the goal is to become free of the embodied, incarnated experience.
Yeah.
And meditation was used as a method to catapult us out of this sense of a separate consciousness and into a higher state of consciousness. And that's beautiful. And it also can lead to a kind of numbing of our hearts, and a diminishment of our compassion, our capacity for compassion.
Wonderful point.
If we think of this world as an illusion to be transcended, then, who cares if the world is burning? It's really just, it's not real. It's not the really real. And so Ram Dass actually has always been very good at putting language around social engagement and environmental protection without getting caught, like while still cultivating what he called the witness, the ability to see it all from a bigger perspective, a more peaceful place, and from that place engage with our hearts to alleviate the suffering that exists.
I find that that's my work, to try and follow Ram Dass's teachings in being present, but also trying to do something, and not ignore the other. In fact, one of my co-author, Dr. Nicholas Sutton, who's done quite a few books with me, he was in the 60s, he became a Hare Krishna, I think, he was initiated by Prabhupada, who founded ISKCON. But he was in India at the time, and he saw the poverty in India, particularly at that time, was much greater than it is today, although there is still a lot of poverty in India today. But he wanted to feed some people at the time, and one of the other people who was around at the scene said to him, "Oh, you don't need to feed them because they're Mayavadis. They're engaged in that, and we are doing transcendental work." And it's not a view that everyone in the organization would follow, but he was really, had a stark difference to that view. He wanted to feel compassion and kindness, and he actually went on to do a PhD on the Mahabharata.
Wow.
Wonderful teacher, and he told me about a story at the end of the Mahabharata where Yudhishthira, the king, the oldest Pandava, he's walking up the mountain, and when Indra, the god of the heavens, calls him up to heaven, a dog had been following him all the way up the mountain. And he said, "I'll come if you allow me to bring my dog." And then Indra said, "No, dogs are not supposed to come to heaven. Why are you bringing this up?" And then he says, "Well, then I'll stay here and take care of the dog rather than going to heaven." And I've always loved that story, for the loving of the dog is the most spiritual thing that you can do. And the goal is not heaven. The goal is here and now, and taking care of nature and ourselves and the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, and doing something out of that loving awareness of presence. I'd love if you have any similar stories that you've come across in your journey of compassion being the present.
Well, actually, I was just thinking of a similar story, and I think it's a midrash in Judaism that says that if the Messiah comes while you're, the Jews are waiting for the Messiah, right? Sure. While you're planting a tree, finish planting the tree and then go to the Messiah.
Wow.
But the first thing is to plant that tree. So, I think there are a lot of, again, the mystical wisdom at the heart of all the spiritual traditions does not separate itself from life. And so if we can serve So in Judaism, for instance, it says that the divine, that God, is completely unknowable, beyond the beyond the beyond. Kind of like in the Upanishads, that Brahman is beyond the beyond the beyond. I can't remember what the description is now, so we can just forget that. But all spiritual traditions recognize that the Supreme Being is beyond all description and all conception.
Yes.
And so it says in Judaism, the only way we can know God is in community, is through each other. And that's why the values, and the primary values in Judaism are values of engagement with other human beings. The way we treat each other is the way we relate to the divine. You wouldn't guess that right now from the policies of Israel and this incredible suffering that the Israeli government is responsible for. But Jewish values are the opposite of what we see happening now. Jewish values are, we actually know God through each other, and therefore the way we treat each other is the way we treat the Holy One.
Yeah.
And those are the primary teachings, simply because the Supreme is boundless and beyond all form, and that's wonderful. And so, but we need, it's like in Hinduism how we have all of the different deities, the gods and the goddesses, as ways of knowing the one.
Yeah.
You know, when Hinduism is called polytheistic, it's kind of a misnomer, because
I think it's beyond all of those theistics, and all traditions ultimately are. I think even these ideas of monotheism or polytheism or something, they don't actually touch that space which is beyond any kind of theism. And the word Upanishad actually means, I'm sure you know, just to sit near the truth, to take you close to that truth. It doesn't get you there. That thing is beyond that. And Ram Dass said to me, Maharaji is my doorway to Brahman. So at that doorway, there's the beyondness.
Yeah. And we need those doorways.
Yeah.
So we have the forms, we have the gods and the goddesses, we have the gurus and the artists and the musicians and the activists, and we have each other.
Yeah, satsang.
Satsang, to be doorways to Brahman.
That's really beautiful. That's really nice, and a really good way of seeing it when we come together, because I also find that in the busyness of life or email or anything, we often are always thinking about the next thing rather than being here. So even if we are in a satsang or an event, we're thinking, what about next week? What's happening? Whereas right now it's so precious and so special, the feeding of people now. So one of my favorite quotes is, poverty is a complex issue, but feeding a child isn't. And in the view of wanting to solve something in the future, you miss the opportunity to be fully present now and express that love, which could then shape that future who solves poverty later on. But if you deal with now in anger and a sense of negative urgency.
Negative urgency, yes, beautiful.
Then we miss that opportunity.
It's relational, isn't it, Hanuman Das? That, you and I meeting, it's about this heart connection. That it's not about the ideas that we're exchanging. It's about this heart connection, and it's such a blessing. What did you say earlier about the blessing of how service can feel good? What did you say? I don't recall exactly.
Yeah, I feel that Maharaji, when he was asked, how can I become enlightened? He said, go and feed people, go and serve people. And serving others, we forget our own self for a short while, and we automatically become lifted. So there is a verse in the Gita where Krishna says, Sarva Bhuta Hiterata. And Hiterata means finding delight in. So you achieve delightfulness at the fact of serving others.
Because so he didn't just say, do your duty and don't be attached to the fruits of your actions. He also said, there is delight Yes, sir. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, happiness and joy and delightfulness. And what you said about each part of your life becoming an offering and a part of that spiritual work. That's in the Gita in 424. There's a beautiful part where Krishna says, the offering is Brahman. The one who offers is Brahman, who offers it all to Brahman and the whole things. And in fact, it's in Be Here Now.
Yeah.
Ram Dass, I think, put it as the food prayer. Brahma
That's
Panam,
right.
Brahma Havir. Have you seen that one
Yes.
in that spiritualizing it? I'm actually getting a thought of Deepa Ma. Did you ever come across her?
Of course, I wrote about her in Wild Mercy.
You did? Oh, I look forward to reading that. Did you meet her at all?
No.
Did you ever have any? Oh, you didn't get a chance.
No, I have friends
to meet her.
who met her.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sharon Salzberg.
Yeah. What's your feeling about Deepa Ma? Like, I obviously never met her, but from what I've read and heard from those who have, she seems like an extraordinary being who connected the spiritual to the everyday life as well.
Exactly, Hanuman Das. That was her essence, was in reclaiming the sacred in the middle of the ordinary and also the difficult. You know, she also was a bereaved mother. I think she lost all her children, multiple children. She reminds me of Kisa Gotami in the one of the stories in the life of the Buddha, the young woman whose child died, and she went everywhere asking, is there anyone who can bring my child back to life? And everyone said, sorry, I'd love to help you, but nobody can bring your child back to life. And finally this is the mustard seed story, right? Finally someone said, there's this man teaching in the forest. You can go to him, and maybe if anyone could bring your child back to life, it would be him. And of course it was Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. And the young woman carrying the corpse of her child went to the Buddha and said, please, Master, bring my child, revive my child. I cannot bear this loss. And that's when he said, go back to your village and gather a mustard seed from every household that has not experienced the death of a loved one. Bring it back, I'll grind it up, I'll make a tincture and put it on your child, and he'll come back to life. And of course, not a single household was free of the experience of suffering, and she was enlightened when she recognized that we belong to each other, that everybody suffers, and that we share this human predicament, as Ram Dass called it. So Deepa Ma, to me, is the modern version of Kisa Gotami from that story of the Buddha. She allowed herself to grieve her husband and children so completely, and went into a state of contemplative presence where there was nowhere to go but to be with it. That state of the shattered heart expanded to contain the whole world.
It's beautiful. I felt that there was, I can't remember where it was written in her book, the book about her life, where she would just be in a small apartment with her granddaughter and babies running around kind of there, and people would come and learn meditation from her while the everyday family life was just continuing on around her. That's a remarkable kind of thought to think about, that the everyday life spirituality is not only in ashrams and temples and meditation halls, churches, synagogues. It's actually in our
kitchen.
everyday life, in the kitchen. Isn't it something related? I can't remember the word. Was it a Jack Cornfield book that he wrote?
After Ecstasy, the Laundry.
Yeah, that's a lovely title.
It's the best. And Saint Teresa of Avila, Santa Teresa, who I've translated, famously said, God lives among the pots and pans.
Oh, that's beautiful. God lives among the pots and pans. Yeah. That's such a... I feel that every person from all of the various traditions, or none at all, can take great solace in that kind of teaching. Very practical and immediate. And I love that you've been so close to that satsang of people from the 60s and 70s who have really carried forward something so sacred. through these years, and it's important. It's one of the reasons why I want to do this kind of thing, so that it does get passed on to future generations, that there is more than the divisive views that are so loud in the world, the ones of this community over that community, or different religions, or different countries, different backgrounds, cultures, cults, castes, wherever they come from, and how we can, as a global family, transcend those kind of differences is a very important part of the work going forward. I don't know who said it, but I heard this quote. I think it might have been in Larry Brilliant's book, where he said that in the 60s and 70s we had the opportunity to change the world, but we went to the mall instead. Have you heard something similar to that? I found that, but I don't think it's quite true, but I feel like they touched on something, and you had to be so courageous to do what people did then, of traveling across the world and giving up everything and embracing this path. Very few people in today's age will be willing to.
That's right. Well, and you're so humble and gracious to accept all of these Westerners who are helping themselves to your traditions, to the Vedic traditions, and then being open to hearing what our experience of your lineage is.
Well, in my way, I feel that Bharat Varsh, India, or wider India, is the whole world. So that lineage, whatever is there, is somewhere else. And that they always link up. So my wife has family lineage tradition back in the Zoroastrian tradition. And you find that pre-Islamic Iran had so many links to the Vedic tradition and other places. So I find that Ram Dass's words, "We're all walking each other home," is so true, that they are just all one. Ultimately, the deeper we look, we just have to peel back the skins enough of the fruit to know that the juice is all the same ultimately in there, if we're willing to. But I think India has been able to assimilate many other paths, so it wasn't really like closing one for the other. It's kind of just added it in. So I heard a missionary story once tell that they went to India with a picture of Christ and said all of these beautiful stories about what Christ did and how he taught and how he loved everyone, and then they gave an image of Christ, and then the lady in the village, took the picture and placed it on her puja table with all of the other images that she had there. And the missionary was confused and said, "No, that's not what you're supposed to do. We want you to remove all of those and do that." But it's very natural today that whether you're in Jerusalem or whether you visit Bethlehem or whether you go somewhere else, you can feel that, because it's an inclusivist philosophy.
Exactly. I noticed that in India the first time I was there, that almost every household had either Mother Mary or Christ on their puja table, and the texts. They had sacred texts from the different traditions. You do, and your puja table downstairs.
Yeah.
And so I love the inclusivity of Indian culture and how all the yogas lead us home, yoke us back to the one.
Yeah, I hope that can be shared globally with other traditions, that we transcend the seeing of exclusivity of one particular school of thought, which can lead us to more of a craziness.
Insanity.
To not see that there's all different types of fruit and they all taste sweet. And you used the word taste earlier for using that. I think that's such a beautiful word, to taste the spiritual love.
That's the feminine path. That's the path of the sacred feminine. It's sensory and sensual.
I'll tell you something quickly that I heard from Radhanath Swami from ISKCON. He once told me about the gopis when Krishna had a headache, and Krishna was crying, "Oh, I have such a bad headache," and it would only go away if somebody puts their feet on my head. And in India, of course, touching the Guru's feet or touching God's feet or a parent's feet is a great sign of honor and respect and love and devotion. But to put your feet on their head is an absolute no-no.
Yeah.
That's like the worst thing you could do. So the pundits and the pujaris said, if you do that, you will suffer in hell for lifetimes. We're not doing that. So they wouldn't put their feet on Krishna's head. And the gopis heard them. And Krishna was crying, somebody needs to put their feet on my head. So the gopis immediately ran and started smothering their feet all over Krishna's head. And then as they were doing that, the pujari said, you're going to suffer for lifetimes in hell because of this. And they said, even if I can remove Krishna's headache just for a few moments, it will be worth it. Because we love him so much. We love Krishna. So that transcending of rules or even what all of these books say. The love in Sufism or the love in the Ramcharitmanas, I feel transcends what the words even say. Yeah. They can flow over those rocks. The words are like rocks that the water flows over, not to get stuck with the rocks. Isn't it? Like,
that's a beautiful image. And who was it? It was the gopis. It was the feminine.
Yeah.
That broke the rules for love.
Yeah. Yeah. We need more feminine in the world. More feminine love. As we wind up this conversation, because I could speak to you all day. 4 hours, you've said you write for, so we could do 4 hours. What message would you like to share to young people who are perhaps listening to this, exploring their journey in life, and you're thinking about how they navigate all of the complexities that they face, which are so much, and like with artificial intelligence and technology changing at a rapid pace, and environmental damage, temperatures, right? They have so much to think about that I didn't think about at an early age. We weren't even exposed to that level of information until much later. What's your message to young people who might benefit from ordinary mysticism in their life?
You know, it's interesting. You're speaking about young people and all that they're dealing with, and you referred to me as someone from the 60s and 70s, and that's kind of true and kind of not. So actually, Ram Dass is the same age as my parents, and I am in between the ages of a lot of the young people who are coming to Ram Dass's teachings and Ram Dass. Like, I'm right in the middle. You know, I was 30 years younger than Ram Dass. So I was too young to go to India with those guys in the 60s and 70s, but I was right behind in a way. Yeah. And so I feel like I straddle this space between the elders who are leaving their legacy now and the young people who are trying to navigate a much more complex world. So often I feel like it's so much simpler than we make it out to be. It being the spiritual life and a life of service, which are completely intertwined for me, and I think for many of us, for you. And so a sense of humor, of lightness, of playfulness, of irreverence, even while being devoted. That taking it all so seriously leads to a kind of closing of the aperture of our lives and our ability to perceive a big enough reality that we can, that can hold us. There's so much fear, even panic in so many of us now in the face of the collapse of the environment and the disappearance of democracy and all of the violence that we witness. It's easy to completely freak out and to feel like there's no way that we can solve these problems. They're too big. And so to simplify and relax into making our lives and each other's lives as beautiful and nourishing and creative as possible in order to like create the robust vessels that we need to be to meet the challenges of this world. So art, all the arts, music, some kind of contemplative practice, relationship as a vehicle for finding the sacred, to cherish the moments where we get to hang out with each other and be in satsang, be in community, be in family, be with our lovers in a conscious, loving way. All of these simple aspects of the human experience as not being obstacles or impediments to spiritual life, but actually the very places where we access, where we find the presence of the sacred. So lighten up, simplify, simplify our minds, simplify our lives, our need for stuff, or the drive to consume is creating such suffering. So to be able to be content with less. I'm saying this to myself. All of this I'm saying to myself.
To all of ourselves.
Yeah. So
I love that. I really love that.
Thank
so
you.
Practical. And I think it's Lisa Miller who wrote about spirituality and science, the science of spirituality, some of the data around it. And I saw her share a quote for that 85% of young people who have some form of practice or connection to God or spirituality, they do not suffer depression as much.
Yeah.
So even on a very practical level, just purely being connected to something greater than yourself will allow us to have a staff through some of those stormy weathers. And I think, I'm not saying it correctly, but Ram Dass, he wrote a quote where he used different terminology, but I'll use in terms of Kali Yuga and Sat Yuga. He said, whether it's Kali Yuga or Sat Yuga, our work is the same, love and compassion. Whether it's Sat Yuga and everything is beautiful, love, serve, feed people, enjoy, and whether it's Kali Yuga and things are difficult, then you still do love and service. Well, just to finish up, I do selfishly want to ask you something about your time with Ram Dass, something with Ram Dass that you cherish and love, just so that we have it here as something that we can all keep and remember.
I was thinking about when I was very young, maybe 16, and I was living at Lama Foundation, and Ram Dass came to teach one summer, and I was assigned as his helper. And every morning I would bring him his chai and his grapefruit to his little camper in the woods.
Where was this?
At Lama Foundation.
Oh, at Lama,
up in the mountains. And he always wanted to know how I was. I was trying to serve him, but he just always wanted to check in. What are you reading? What are you thinking about? How's your sadhana? But I'm thinking then later, fast forward 40-something years, and I was with him in Maui toward the end of his life. And I spent, I think it was the 40th anniversary of Be Here Now. So I spent a few days with him just asking him, what do you want me to convey back home? I was leading a 40th anniversary celebration in Taos. And so he was really giving me everything that he could think of, that he wanted me to carry of his legacy. And about a year or two later, we were having lunch in Maui again with a group of people, large group of people who were gathered. This was before we started doing those yearly gatherings in Maui, so right before that. And I said, Ram Dass, I feel like all my teaching and all my writing is so bound up with your teachings and your thinking and your spiritual perspective that I can't separate. I almost feel like I'm stealing your stuff because you were such an influence on me for such a young age, and I've been teaching now for so long because I taught high school, I taught college, and then I started giving, talks and workshops. that you're inextricable to from my own consciousness. I don't know what my thoughts are and what are yours. And he took that in. And then later, we were doing kirtan at his house. A few hours later, he called me over afterwards and he said, I've never had a teacher. You're my first one. And I was like, what? And then, it's hard for him to speak because of the stroke. And then he said, you are teaching my teachings. You're carrying my teachings in a very specific way. So he realized that his lineage as a teacher, as a speaker, as a writer was being carried on. Not just Maharaji's teachings, which of course infused both of us, but his way. And it's true, I feel. Even last night, our Sufi friend who heard me give a talk here in London said, you're like a mini Ram Dass. That was the highest compliment anyone could give.
Wow.
His humor, too, is a big part of the influence on me. He didn't take things so seriously.
Yeah.
And he certainly didn't take himself so seriously, and I don't either.
I love that. I love that so much. I remember when I was in Maui, we were writing some work together. I actually written some material with Ram Dass. Mm-hmm. And I want to share that with you afterwards, yes. Exploring the Upanishads that we were talking earlier. But somebody rang the doorbell. And he asked me, can you go and answer it? I think Dasi was somewhere around outside in the garden. And I went and opened the door, and it was a missionary. And it may have been a Jehovah's Witness or someone. He had some leaflets in his hand, and he was kind of looking over the shoulder, saying, where is this? He was looking for Ram Dass. Obviously, he knew that the spiritual teacher was here. And he said, I just want to tell you, whatever is going on here is not good.
Yeah.
He was very stressed and worried and standing at the door. And he says, can I speak to him? Is he busy? And I said, I think he's just in the bathroom at the moment. He's just coming out. But if you give me whatever you want to share, then I'll convey it to him. And so I took his leaflets and said goodbye, and went to Ram Dass and said, it was somebody telling you that what you're doing here is not good, and here's the leaflet. And he laughed so much.
Yeah.
And he said, I love them so much. He found it so playful.
Yeah.
Like he didn't take anything of it seriously.
Beautiful example.
It was just not worrying him at all. It was just, nothing could really faze him, especially at that end phase of his life. Didn't you feel he really just emitted that same love?
Nothing to argue with. Nope, nothing to prove. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place for us to pause for this first of, I hope, many conversations that we can have. And you're always welcome here. And I know you like to go to India, and when you do, you should stop here and come and visit us whenever you can. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ram Ram.
Ram Ram.